Welkom bij Dipsaus, het programma door vrouw van kleur, voor vrouw van kleur en iedereen die geïnteresseerd is in een ander geluid. Ik ben Mariam Elmasloui en dit is een bonusaflevering. Hey, we zijn weer terug met een rapportage op locatie en dat is alweer een tijdje geleden. We zijn met de Dipsaussquad Anousha Nzume en Ebisse rouw kijkje gaan nemen bij de groepstentoonstelling FREEDOM in kunsthal KAdE in Amersfoort. En er is by the way echt een mind-blowing connectie tussen Zuid Afrika en Amersfoort, maar daar komen jullie straks achter. FREEDOM is een groepstentoonstelling met jonge Zuid Afrikaanse kunstenaars die zich verdiepen in de historie, het heden en de toekomst van Zuid-Afrika. Deze generatie Zuid Afrikaanse kunstenaars zijn grotendeels opgegroeid na de afschaffing van de apartheid. En zij dragen deze geschiedenis van geweld en onrecht met zich mee. We beginnen met het openingswoord van de tentoonstelling door professor Wayne Modest, Head of Research van het Research Center for Material Culture.
Which is, what does it mean to live with history? To have to address a difficult history in the everyday lives that you lead, not to be able to forget. One of the things that I think in my own work and my recent work in trying to think South Africa and the Caribbean, Jamaica together, it has been to think places that live in the battle of an afterlife, of a colonial past, that one cannot forget. It is not a place, it is a place where marked in the very architecture of the buildings you walk around, or in the archives with which you live, or in the racial lives with which you experience the world, slavery and colonialism continues to tell itself in the present. So perhaps it was my being Caribbean that open the possibility for that. But then again, there could be another possibility. And that possibility is the specific conjuncture that we are in today. That conjuncture that we're in today in the Netherlands, in Europe, where telling histories is becoming very urgent. And we're thinking about what it means to live with difficult histories in the present is becoming very urgent. I must admit, it is not very often, and I'm going to say this, and I know that it might be politically not right to say, but it's not often that I'm at an institution, a cultural institution in an opening, where there is such a high presence of non-white people. So that in itself is an important issue within cultural institutions today that are battling to try and understand differently their role within society. A society that is rapidly changing, but a society that has been shaped by the colonial. So if that is so, what then does this exhibition do? And why then an exhibition such as this?
En we gaan praten met de curator Nkule Mabaso. Zij vertelt ons over wat ze belangrijk vond om te laten zien, welke kunstenaars zij daar geschikt voor vond en wat de link is tussen Amersfoort en Zuid-Afrika. En zij vertelt ons ook dat de geschiedenis echt niet zo vaag is.
Mabaso. The name is short for Nkule. And Nkule means the mother of freedom.
Oh, wow, lovely.
In Zulu. So, yeah.
All right.
I'm from South Africa, in Newcastle originally, working and living in Cape Town.
Okay. And what is your home?
My home right now is in Cape Town.
It's in Cape Town. All right, so tell us, what are you doing here?
So I'm in the Netherlands to open and mount an exhibition. The exhibition's name is FREEDOM, and it's really showing the work of 15 South African artists. So they're mostly artists born in the 1980s and 1990s. In a capsule.
So what happened in the 1980s and 90s in South Africa? Because you mention it because it has a significance.
Significance, yeah, sure. So, I mean, this basically means that they were born right before South Africa got the independence or freedom from apartheid in a sense. So it would have been after the 1976 student riots and right before 1994, which is when democracy sort of is legislated into South Africa after Mandela's release from prison in 1990. So it's this kind of particular intensifying of racial strains, 1980s to 1990s, and so towards the dying days of apartheid and the birth of democracy, so to speak, political democracy.
Oh, great! Thank you for that context. So you're a curator. So what was your role as a curator? What does that mean?
So I think I'm not going to elaborate on a curator in general, but I think my role in this particular project was, after receiving the invitation to work with Manon, was to then frame the context of the exhibition. So what is the question, and how, what would you like to say, and how do we say this, and then how do we decide which works or artists to work with. And so what was important for me is the kind of the integrity of the work of the South African artist. So not to have a question that is already preformed and shaped by somebody else in a different context, but that fact that I had the possibility to, frame together with Manon the question, and then work with the artists towards the vision of the
And Manon Braat is the second curator from the KAdE.
From the KAdE. Actually, she's an independent curator. So she's also outside of the KAdE. So KAdE is just the institutional home for the exhibition, but we're actually both outside of the institution. So it's two independent people that have come together.
Oh, lovely. So what was the question?
Well, the question was also a bit of a reflection on what does it mean to be free, and what is freedom essentially, and so how would this particular branch of young artists, not necessarily young as in young in age, but perhaps like practice-wise, they're just out of university within the last 10 years, and what are they saying in their practice and what they're encountering in the society. So what are they saying, and sort of relate in relation to history. And in this particular context, of course, then it was this particular history between South Africa and the Netherlands. And in making the decision to only work with South African artists and not in conversation with Dutch artists, was to say, well, actually, this experience of South Africa is very specific, and if we were to put those artists directly into conversation, it might actually the framing might shift, and you would not get a particular sense of this place that has been shaped by this colonial history and other histories.
Because that colonial history has to do with the place where we are now, the Netherlands.
Pretty much.
Now, I can tell you that already in Dutch education, there's very little to say about colonization or the history of the Netherlands as slavery when it related to the Caribbean, let alone this vague history the Netherlands has with South Africa. Was that something you had to think about a lot?
No, because it might appear vague, but it's absolutely not vague in South Africa, because South African history or official history begins in 1693 or 1672 when Jan van Riebeeck, captain of a ship of the VOC, arrives in South Africa. So that is counted as the beginning of South African history. So there is no pre-colonial history of South Africa in a sense. So if this is your education right now in South Africa, and your history only starts at this particular moment, this violence is ongoing, and so it is vague for someone who's in the Netherlands, but we live it on an everyday basis with the name
the consequences.
And the consequences. So the statues, the public figures in public space are colonialists, imperialists, people who arrive there, and it's their figures. You don't see so much sculptures of our own heroes or our own particular people, so to
because
speak.
There has been a student movement in where they want to how do you say that, kind of rewrite history in that sense of statues. We have the same discussion going on now in the Netherlands. Street names, now it's filled. I think you can almost say 60% of all the streets are a white man who had something to do with slavery.
Some atrocity, yeah.
Exactly. Because we noticed the moment that we walked in here, the VOC flag.
Right.
So can you tell us, so the first thing we asked is it art?
Mm-hmm. So the VOC flag is actually from Harun Gansali. It's one of his works that he's made for the exhibition and decided to mount it over KAdE because we're in Amersfoort. The first ship that made its way to South Africa with slaves that was stolen from a Portuguese ship that had taken people from Angola was called the Amersfoort.
Wow.
Precisely.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Really? My mind is blown at this moment.
Right. So it's a very particular, this whole war on the seas that involves, so these people were counted as cargo, and this was a bandit ship. Exactly. And it was a bandit ship that basically attacked a Portuguese ship. And so so that's what I can say about what that work is about. Mm-hmm. So the flag is at half mast.
Yes, yeah.
It's at half mast. It's a symbol of mourning, and so this should take you into the exhibition as you see the red bloody hands as you enter into the space. The hands of Jan van Riebeeck, and then as you come in further into the space, and all of this story is explored and into a bit more detail. Of course, it's still a bit vague, but so I guess you get more the sense from the actual writing on the catalogue about what the work is about. But so the Amersfoort, there's still a town in South Africa that's called Amersfoort.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So this whole long history, so for everybody here, I guess it's just Amersfoort. That is the name of the place. Yeah. It's so neutral. It doesn't mean anything.
It's just outside Utrecht, basically.
Right, basically. But there is no sort of linking to this long legacy. So every name here means something. There's in this total history, because if these names have kind of survived history and have continued, you can best believe that they find themselves replicated or somehow reproduced where the Dutch found themselves or headed to.
So what do you want, last question, what do you want people to take with them after they've seen the exhibition? As a creator, what's important for you?
I think what is important for me, and as a thing that I'm writing about now, and as a question that I'm working towards and something I'm trying to explore, is around the idea that colonialism was not just a mere subjugation that people willingly accepted. And we've got to stop looking at it this way, like, oh, there was nothing there anyway, so people arrived and could put up their flag because it's like the moon. You can go anywhere and colonize everything. There were no people. So this strange narrative. And to say, actually, there were people and they fought.
Yes.
Not only were they people, they fought you from the banks of the river to the sea. They fought you. And this is like from the very first contact. So all you and your way of countering that was coming back with bigger and better guns against people who were just saying, do not disturb us, we are fine. And if they did try to be civil and trade with you, you involve all kinds of trickery. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, really, it's not a rewriting of history, so to say, but it's kind of like, look, there are these moments. Where are they? What are they? Let's find them. We're not saying, okay, fine, delete, Control Alt Delete. No, we're saying, fine, this is your narrative, this is your version, here's the other end of the story. This is actually what happened from our perspective. So you've had your say, now sit down, can I have my say?
Yes.
Now listen.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
We gaan door met een van de kunstenaars en Anousha en Ebisse schoven aan om met Miss Siwani te praten. We praten over haar kunst, hoe het is om borden in Nederland te kunnen lezen, whether you like it or not, hoe zij exoticisme van de witte blik tegengaat. Jullie gaan enorm genieten van deze unapologetic vrouw. En trouwens, excuses als je geklop hoort, dan is het Miss Siwani die een punt maakt door haar hand op tafel te leggen. Alright, enjoy.
When I got into Amsterdam town, I remembered that I had like this very melancholic feeling, and it was also kind of nostalgia for something that I had never experienced, but I realized what it is the architecture. It reminds me of home, because home is still very colonial in the way that it's being built. So that was the first thing where I was like, this is a total mindfuck. But okay, let me keep going. And the more I looked at things and the more I saw the architecture and the more I saw like these little nooks and crannies, I was like, it's literally how you build and how you still live. So it was really, really, and this whole, you know, I found out about the north side of Amsterdam by mistake. And this idea of separation is also how parts of South Africa are built, on this notion of separation. Yeah. So it doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from this place, and we still carry that. So it was really, really sad for me to just sit there for a moment and just process all of this
looking
stuff.
at architecture that was imposed on you, basically.
Yeah, and still some people are like, "Ooh, I want a Dutch whatnot house," you know.
That was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask was, I think it was in last year, October, there was the Afro Vibes Festival in Utrecht, where there were a lot of South African artists.
There was an Afro Vibes last year as well.
Yeah, last year.
It was in Utrecht, and it was also the Bali and whatnot.
Yeah.
It was like lots of places in Amsterdam.
And I went to one gathering in Utrecht where there was a Q&A with the artists and a couple of people from the Netherlands as well. And one of the questions that was raised by the artists in residence who were present at that meeting, that they felt that they were, because of during their residency and even whilst working on their art with these institutions, they asked, where are our people? Where's the black diaspora? They said we don't know where they are, we don't meet them, they don't come to the shows.
The Black Dutch.
And not even just only black, but people
There's
of
so
color.
many black South Africans, so many Surinamese, there's many people. I also asked, when I walk into these places, I went to a show, I think it was at Rakes, and I didn't see many black people.
You know what happened? The first thing when we walked in, today when we walked in, we kind of know we're prepared for it's an opening gallery. You know exactly the type of crowd that's coming in. We walk in, we look left, we see two black people like and we knew them. The first two black people we saw was Wayne and Simone, and
I hugged two strangers as well.
And also two strangers were like, "Hey, more black people." That's still the norm in this country.
It's so weird because I live in Bos and Loma, and so when I come out of my house and I see a black person, I'm like, "Hey."
Definitely.
You know, so it's still kind of, and I remember going onto the bus for the first time, and I had been here for weeks, and this was the first time when I'd seen 5 black people in a whole bus all together, and I was like,
oh, hello,
people. So it's at these events, I don't know what to say anymore. So I guess I can say something about being in my own country and not seeing black people. I think that's what I've decided to do. My issue is now being in Europe and then saying something.
I understand.
It's not.
Not your. You feel like it's not your place.
It's not my place. It's not my home, and also I'm no longer interested because this is not my problem. You know, I've still got a bigger problem at home that needs to be fixed. Because clearly the people who created the problem left it there for us to fix, and they still impose their own kind of.
But you're now in the country that's sort of like
that kind of started the whole problem.
Internationally and in your country.
So
how is that for you as an artist to move in those spaces?
And also hear that language, which is very close to
Afrikaans. So first shock. I arrive and I can read the directions properly. My husband was like, I thought you didn't want to speak this language. I was like, well, I don't, but I can read it, so I know where to go, so let's go.
And is your husband Dutch?
No. He's Zimbabwean.
But he lives here. He lives in the Netherlands.
Yeah, he's the one who got the job.
Okay.
And then we moved here.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's always been his dream. I found out later to live in Amsterdam. And then I was like, for real though?
Yeah, but he's not raised with the Afrikaans language in Zimbabwe?
No,
exactly.
British colony.
British colony.
But we were also a British colony.
Of course, after which the Dutch still
But then it was
You got all the prizes.
But you know how the Dutch, that's what I really find interesting. That was also one of the questions that during that Q&A that I asked. What I come from Ethiopia, and when I come to the Netherlands, when you learn about the Dutch colonial history, it's even if they decide to talk about it,
it pervades every single place in Africa because of slavery.
Yeah, but also when they speak in terms of like colonizing, not just the slavery, but colonizing places, taking up space, literally, robbing, they tend to mention Indonesia, Dutch East Indies, and the West Indies, which is Suriname and Caribbean. They always forget South Africa. That South Africa was a colony from the 17th century through the 19th. It's not discussed. It's not 1652.
1652, yeah. Oh,
17th century until the 19th.
Yeah.
It's 200 years.
But about the question, so
more
how?
than 200
But
years,
you were telling us about how you're moving in the space. Should we go back to that or first?
No,
is there
what
another
I was trying to say is that because for me, because it's never mentioned, I don't relate to it in that way. I kind of forget that South Africa is actually also has been a Dutch colony, except when I'm in the presence of Black South Africans. That's when that it clicks. And one of the questions I asked was like, how does it feel to actually be in that space where the Dutch were colonizers, but they don't see themselves as colonizers?
It's so interesting whenever you meet up with Afrikaans people, because they will always say, especially in South Africa, they will always say, oh, I've got a Dutch passport, or, my Dutch heritage. They're so proud of this Dutch heritage, but yet they call themselves South Africans, So every time you're like, you're not actually African, because, you're of Dutch heritage and you're so proud to be. Just because you're born here doesn't mean that you are this person, Like, for example, if I was born in Cameroon, if I was born in Germany, but my parents are both Cameroonian. In Germany, what are they going to say you are?
Exactly.
You're Black, yeah.
You're Cameroonian.
Yeah.
Because even though you're born there, you have the citizenship and whatnot, you are never actually German.
No.
It works like that for Black people everywhere around in the West.
Color means something.
Yeah, but it's the same thing as it's what I call the Rachel Dolezal syndrome. So what happens is, for white people, they can identify as anything that they want to identify as, but when you're Black, you can't all of a sudden identify as white.
Never.
Because your skin tells a different story.
And also, if you're half white, as I am, I know my position is different from a person, a Black woman who has a darker complexion than me. But for white people,
you're Black.
Yeah, I can never say, today I'm here as half a white woman. Can you please address?
Can we acknowledge?
Yeah, can you please address me today as half white? Because that's why I'm here. I'm here now representing Russia. It's virtually impossible.
It's impossible. That's exactly how when it happens in these spaces, when I'm around these spaces, I'm just like, okay, cool.
But they do expect you to speak the language properly, 100%, and know everything and understand. So
the first thing is, spreken jij Zuid Afrikaanse? I'm like, no.
How about it now?
But the problem is the fact that I can understand what they said.
Yeah.
Can we start from the beginning? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself for our listeners? We've already done our research.
What do you want to know?
Did you always know that you wanted to be an artist?
No, I wanted to be a pilot.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to be a pilot, but the funny thing is, when I was a child, always from a very young age, my mother did ballet for very many years. And then she fell pregnant with her child and she couldn't do it, so immediately when she had a girl, she was like, my dreams. So
here are my dreams. Go fulfill them.
She's like, ballet dancer. But I quit ballet at some point, but throughout this, my grandmother had always fostered this. She would buy clay, or she would dig up clay, and she would like, let's make little objects, and she would buy things. My grandmother formed an NGO, and she's also one of the people who, whenever we have an election in a African country. She goes to the election to make sure that it's free and fair and democratic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she's
That's
one
a
of
hard
those
job.
people, yeah, and she still does it. The last place she actually went to was Ethiopia.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. That was tough.
that went well.
Yeah.
That
It didn't go so
it
well.
didn't go so well.
So they had to
Yeah.
go back, but
Yeah.
now she's back, and I don't know what's going on now. I'm not asking.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, so she used to bring back like little things from
Yeah.
everywhere in Africa and she'd be like, oh, let's try and make this. How do they make these things, you know? So my grandmother kind of fostered this love for arty things, and my mother was a journalist. So she would just give me like her spare paper. I wasn't one of those kids who watched TV. I would read books, and because my mother would lock herself in a room, and then I figured, there must be something great in these books. So I locked myself in my room and
So you would lock yourself in a room to write or to...
to read.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just quiet time reading. The TV would be blasting for like other people if we had a visitor or whatever, but my mom was not interested. Crazy.
Yeah, that's one of one of the questions that I wanted to ask was also how within the global art market and consumption of art, how whether the African art is it still something exotic, or has it come into its own? Hello.
It will forever be exotic. You will forever be, as a female, as a black African female, number one, you will forever be fetishized, exoticized, objectified. If you think that's not going to happen to you, you're fucking kidding yourself.
So you're aware of it.
Very aware,
Okay.
but the thing is, I mean, it's all about how you return the gaze. You know it's coming.
Yeah.
But how do you say, okay, you're doing this to me, what am I going to do to you? You know, it's either you make them feel guilt, shame. You have to rigidly remove that from their psyche.
Yeah.
And the only person who can do that is the artist.
Yeah.
If you have that in your psyche and you go into either a performance photographic piece or a video, especially when you have nothing. I have many videos and photographs where I wear nothing.
Yeah.
Because I think that the body is a costume generally. But immediately when you go out into the world like that, then it's going to be, they no longer start looking at you here.
Yeah.
Unless you keep them here. You have to keep people here and not here.
So can you give an example of what you have here in KAdE museum of that, what you give back? Do you give back shame? Can you give us
In
an
my
example?
own work?
Yeah.
For this, no. I don't have one of those pieces. This sculptural piece is generally about cleanliness as a black woman, you know. I know so many people many black women who clean white people's houses to sustain and to provide for their families, and also the way that your own family encounters your own body as a female. My family doesn't have many females, and I look at how they interact with the women in my family. The boys can go and be boys.
Of course.
But
That's nice
girls-
behavior, exploring.
Yes, the girls, you can't go with the boys yet. Stay here. Come back inside. Wash. Be clean. Stay cute.
Sit like this.
Exactly.
Not like
Wear that
this.
cute little dress. Don't get it dirty. Boy will come back
Yeah.
and he will be washed. Just, and it will be nothing. The girl, bend over. We must wash these parts. We must wash these parts. You must be clean. And this clean, like why is it not the same for men as it is for women when a body is just a body?
Do you think that it implies that women are unclean?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
It always does. Women menstruate, women give birth, women do multiple things that men will never ever be able to do. So, we are the vessels of life, and there are many things going on in our body that clean themselves.
Yeah.
We don't need like all of this abrasive shit. These things make us sick. They make our parts sick.
Yeah, I don't use any perfumed.
Well, I had to really learn it.
Yeah, I had to tell her
I had to learn how
leave
to.
you for JJ alone.
Yeah, you have to leave it alone.
Yeah.
You just.
But
wash.
what you said, that's what I can really identify. But it has to smell like daisies.
That's
No.
exactly why you see flowers in like the arms of the person, because when you pick up that water, you're putting it, and everything must be like smell like roses.
And the blue liquid.
It's blue. It's
always,
never red. I wish I could menstruate blue blood.
Because you were considered as the
Post-apartheid.
the generation.
I would call what we live in now in South Africa post-apartheid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, white people still feel like they're entitled to shit. They still feel like they won't give us anything when the majority of the land, of the people of the land are still poor. What freedom are you getting? There's no freedom. I mean, you go back to some places and there's no electricity, there's no toilets, there's no running water, etc., etc. They struggle to get food. There's just so many things, and it's not like a farmer here where it's just like, this is how I make money. No, this is how I eat. This is
how
what
I live
eat
tomorrow.
Yeah. So it's just it doesn't exist. Like freedom is not a notion that we are very. I'm lucky that I'm here, because I get to experience. My parents were not lucky. And they weren't privileged either. That's the wrong word.
Because your mother was a dancer, a journalist.
My mother was a dancer. Then she fell pregnant. Then she had studied journalism, so she went into journalism. My father is a lawyer, but he wasn't before. He was a teacher. And then after his children, he studied law. And so everybody is trying to do something for themselves with their own money, and they're trying to just make it better for the next generation. Because how we say, Europeans actually like to say this, your mother will be your father will be a carpenter, so that the next child can be a teacher, so that that child can be this, so that that child can be a doctor, this one can be a neurosurgeon, so that that child can be an artist.
Beautiful.
And it doesn't work like that for us.
No.
For us, it's just like, I see things with, I can make this thing. And you make it. And your parents are like, oh, we're in the kak.
In the car. That's funny.
Like, oh, we're in the shit. And then I remember the first time, my mother did not actually understand what I was doing. She was like, what do you mean you're in studio out late? You're such a liar. You're out drinking. I'm like, literally, I'm setting up my exam for the next 2 days.
Exactly what my mom says. Amsterdam again, huh? For the radio. Not podcast, but for the radio.
I think we all...
Not as an artist, only as a child.
And can you share, was there a difference? Can you share that experience?
My grandmother's father is not from South Africa. He's from Mozambique. And my father is not quite black. He's a little Asian and black. So, where did I go? I went to Senegal. How can I forget that?
So was that a different experience for you as a black woman or as a black artist?
Completely.
And what was the biggest difference?
Everything is so free. People own their blackness. And I went to Zimbabwe. People own their blackness, and these were all things that I had to do for art. So I went to Zimbabwe on a residency and for a show. I went to Dakar for a show as well. And it's so different how everything is run. It looks like chaos, but it's not. It's not chaotic at all. It's just there's a system and people understand the system and they know how it works. I'm not Senegalese and I'm not Zimbabwean, so I'll never understand the intricacies of those countries. However, I do understand, and I went to Malawi, yes.
There we go. There come the countries.
So, these places just they own their blackness. They are not trying to be anything other than that. And even though they have their own decolonial issues, they're moving away from that shit. They're moving away. They're making amends, and they're trying to, okay, if no one's gonna help us, we're gonna do our shit ourselves. So I'm finding it more and more difficult as to to be honest, why we keep white people in our country. Because they must go back on the boats that they came with.
But the thing is, I do understand your frustration, and I think the difference between...
I have white friends, by the way.
Some of my best friends are white.
Some of our best friends are
how
white.
you're token black. Yeah.
But I also think that we tend to forget, even the world tends to forget, that it's not that long ago that South Africa became...
It is only flipping less than 400 years ago.
Yeah.
How long was slavery in America? And people are still not over that.
Yeah, exactly.
And they expect us. The one thing I'm really tired of hearing from white people is get over it.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
And
It's
this is
20 years.
It's not that long ago. 22 years.
Yeah.
What do you
Audacity,
mean? This is not even like a person who has a job. This is a person who's still in university.
Yeah.
This is not like a full.
Not
this
even.
is not an adult.
Yeah, no, of course not.
And also what you said, it hasn't stopped.
It's not like it has
there's
stopped
still
economically.
colonization in the continent of Africa. There's still people are being
They
enslaved.
colonize us in different ways.
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
Economically, culturally.
So it means that, do African artists, and especially Black South African non-white artists, do you have the luxury of making art for the sake of art? L'art pour l'art?
No, we do not have the luxury. Who have you seen make art for the sake of art who is black? That person must come from a really well-off family. They just made it in life and they no longer care about anything. Nobody who is an artist and is black is just making art for the sake of art. I've seen many, many white kids just make art for the sake of art. I'm like, it must be nice. But
the thing is, I work in not in advertising. My husband works in advertising. I work in what
Publishing. You're a publisher, my dear.
My publisher.
Books.
I'm her editor. She's
You know how white people, friends and friends, we do the
she was
same.
Quite an interesting book that she wrote, which made waves in the Netherlands.
About whiteness.
About
yes,
whiteness.
please share.
Yeah. And one of the things that also the young writers who are people of color who went on residencies with white Dutch writers, one of them, she was really shocked, and she was looking at them in awe, like they were like, oh, I just write because I want to write. And not because I
have to.
They had that luxury of just whining about some incident that happened last week.
I understand that completely. I've seen people do that, and I'm just like, you do you, boo boo.
Yeah.
We don't have those luxuries.
No.
We have our luxury is getting invited to an exhibition and being here, and then exhibiting our stories, because we're giving birth to a baby, so we give birth to these things and then they're no longer ours.
I thought it was interesting that today at the opening the director of the museum said, one thing that was really important to us, that we also include a South African curator, include, because of course
if it wasn't for her, half of us wouldn't be here. Because we would not have said yes.
Yes, but you see but still, can you imagine the perspective saying, you know what, I'm going to do a nice thing versus, but
it's necessary.
Yeah, who am I to even?
It's essential.
Exactly.
But it's essential.
I expect that now because I know what the West works and how it works. So I now have the luxury. This is my luxury. My luxury is saying, I'm not going to entertain this bullshit.
We gingen nadat we een aantal mensen en kunstenaars hadden gesproken ook zelf natuurlijk een kijkje nemen. En we waren echt onder de indruk. We hebben ook meteen vastgelegd wat we ervan vonden. En dat kunnen jullie hier beluisteren. We hopen dat jullie hebben genoten van deze aflevering. En dat jullie het even interessant vonden als ons. En jullie kunnen naar Tell Freedom in de kunsthal KAdE in Amersfoort tot 6 mei zien. Go, go, go. Het is echt super interessant. En XOXO en tot de volgende grote aflevering.
Ja, nou, wat vonden jullie ervan?
Ik vind het een hele mooie tentoonstelling, heel, heel confronterend. Ik vind het wel echt een emotionele tentoonstelling, omdat de pijn en de ongelijkwaardige positie, het voelt drukkend op de ziel. Maar heel interessant.
Ja, het is zeker de moeite waard om te zien. Ik vond inderdaad ook echt... Ik vond dat we er te snel doorheen zijn gegaan, maar we hebben gewoon tijdsdruk. Maar ik vond inderdaad vooral de allereerste waar we naar binnen gingen met die VOC-scheep. En you see the ship, you hear the noise. Ik wilde zo snel mogelijk weg.
Ja.
Gewoon.
Ja, ik ook. Ik vond het,
Verschrikkelijk.
ja, er was ook een foto van zeg maar de eerste Nederlanders die zo kwamen aanlopen. En dan zie je het schip op het achtergrond.
Ja.
Ik kreeg er de griegel, hoe noem je dat?
Rillingen.
De rillingen van. Ja.
En heel bizar om hier rond te lopen en echt ook zelf als soort kunstobject te worden bekeken door plukjes witte mensen die echt letterlijk gewoon nekhernia krijgen omdat ze zich helemaal omdraaien om hun eigen as. Om ons na te kijken, te bekijken, te vergapen met open mond. Echt bizar.
Heel openlijk staren, het is heel raar. Het is het eerste wat je gewoon opvalt.
En ik dacht eerst, van, ben ik nou
Nee.
zeg maar, hoe noem je dat, helemaal gek en... nee, sorry, dat is ableism. Ik moet eruit. Ben ik nou achterdochtig? Maar jullie hadden het ook door.
Absoluut,
Ja.
meteen.
Ja.
Vrijwel
zeker.
direct. En dat je ziet ook dat, including de Zuid Afrikaanse kunstenaars, dat je elkaar opzoekt.
Ja.
Dat je
Je lacht met elkaar.
letterlijk de black nod. Je kijkt naar elkaar, je gaat, you acknowledge each other's existence.
Ja, maar ik voelde wel ook inderdaad van, ja, wij zijn wel echt gewoon de
Ja, dat is-
Afrikanen die in Europa wonen.
Oh,
hè?
absolutely.
Dus
Oh
wij,
God,
ik had
ja.
wel bijna zoiets van, nee, niet gaan high-fiven. Dat
Nee, dat gaan we niet doen.
We moeten ook onze positie erkennen nu.
Absoluut.
We hebben wel, maybe accidentally, bij binnenkomst hebben we wel volgens mij iemand een knuffel gegeven die we helemaal
Ja,
niet kenden.
we hadden geen
En-
idee, maar ze stonden
Nou, een prachtige kunstenaar.
zo.
Het werk. Maar ja,
Ja.
zij is het heel leidzaam heeft het ondergaan. De knuffel
Ja,
van
eigenlijk
ons.
wel, ja.
Oh, wat
Maar
erg.
want ze zat wel naast 2 mensen die we kenden. Dus
Ja.
we dachten,
kijk,
hetzelfde.
ja.
Oh, black people! En dan meteen knuffelen.
Precies. Dus ja, tell
Wel-
freedom.
Ja, Tell Freedom heet
Freedom.
het. In Amersfoort, kunsthal de KAdE. Worth the travel.
Want
Absolutely.
alle artiesten zijn Zuid-Afrikaanse zwarte artiesten
Ja.
die unapologetic hun verhaal komen
Echt.
vertellen.
Ja.
En je daar ook mee komen confronteren.
Ja,
Ja.
heel interessant. Heel mooi.
Ja, en dat kan je ook een beetje horen aan het gesprek dat we hadden met Miss Siwani.
Ja.
Geweldig.
En dat soort kunst kan je eigenlijk verwachten van
Ja.
fuck it, wij gaan jullie even vertellen hoe jullie geschiedenis...
Ja. Dit is geen kunst omdat je gewoon... oh ja, ik maak gewoon kunst. Nee,
Nee.
wat zij zei, dat is onmogelijk en dat is heel zichtbaar.
Oké. That was it, folks.
Nice.